So in this video, I just want to talk about I want to just kind of do a very unscripted sort of review of everything we covered in the course. The point of this is to be very unscripted and just kind of go through the most important things that you learned in the course, just to kind of maybe solidify the things in your memory. All right, so with the architecture diagram in front of me here, this is the architecture that we've gone through. We've gone from a remote data source or a client querying a web service and then feeding live data all the way back to an activity or a fragment using an observer. Now, keep in mind that we never got into the database cache portion, which is this little section down here, but that's going to be what's coming next for my website. I haven't decided if I'm going to kind of append it to this course or if I'm going to make kind of my own separate course or another separate course just specifically on building a database cache. I think I'm probably going to make it a separate one. That way it keeps it nice and separated, since it's kind of a whole other concept-ish. I don't know. Just for organization's sake, I don't want to have a course that has like 100 videos. I'd rather keep it around 40 to 50. So anyway, that's probably what's going to come next. All right, so let's review the application. So if you open the application, first of all, you have a recycler view that can use many different types of views. You have categories. You have, if I click on them, you can then get a different list item layout. If I run out of results, so if I type gummy in here, scroll to the bottom, we have another list item. So these are all part of the same recycler view with different view holders. And then of course there's that loading animation that if I make the query again, that loading animation right there, which is also part of pagination. So if I was to search for something like bacon and onion and scroll to the very bottom, it's going to retrieve another 30 results and append it to the list after showing that nice loading animation at the bottom. So pagination is a very important thing. You should probably implement it in all of your projects whenever possible, because it helps to optimize performance for your applications. You never want to query hundreds or thousands of results. You want to keep it, I like to say the sweet number is between 10 and 30 at a time. And then when the user scrolls to the bottom of the list, it's going to query another 10 or 20 results, whatever your pagination is set at. So what else did you learn? Well, you learned how to actually make these queries to a web service. So if I pulled up an internet browser, foodtofork.com is where we made queries to a web service. So I logged in, I registered, I got an API key, and then I used that API key to access their recipe API. So there's only two search queries that we can use, the search query and the get query. The search query lets you specify a search parameter, and then that will then return a list of results matching that search parameter, and there's default pagination appended to those results. So you can get like page 1, page 2, page 3, all the way up to however many results the API will return, and each page will return 30 results at a time. The other query is a get query. So this only lets you specify a specific recipe ID. And so that's what, if I was to click on one of these recipes, that's going to give you this view here. It gives you access to an image, a title, and then a list of ingredients and a social rank. There's also a few other things like the publisher and what where that recipe was originally posted to. But in general, that's the main sort of bulk of information you get from there. You also have some sorting available here. We didn't actually go over it, but it looks like there's two different types of sorting. You could specify sort equals R. So all you would need to do, if I was to pull up Postman and look at the GET request, all I would need to do is do and sort equals R. And what that would do is that would sort it in terms of the social rank, which is what it does by default. So actually this would technically do nothing. But if you were to do sort equal T, then it sorts it by trendingness, whatever that means. So the most recent recipes from our publishers have a trend score based on how quickly they're gaining popularity. So this is another algorithmic thing that they have implemented. So if I was to go sort equals T, actually I don't think it probably doesn't do it on the get query because that's a specific recipe. It would have to be on the search query. So if you did and sort equals T, that would then sort them in terms of trendingness, which is part of their algorithm. So of course, if you're going to use a web service, use a web API to get data from, you need some way in your app to retrieve that data. And my personal favorite library to make web service requests is to use Retrofit, which is the library that we used in this course. So to use Retrofit, you need to create an interface class that defines the call objects that will return a response given a particular or request. So what you do is you essentially model the request here. So our first one is search recipe, where the parameters are key, queue, and page. And if you were to compare that with the request that we tested in Postman, we have the key, we have the queue, and we have the page. So sort wasn't part of it. We never did any sorting. So all you're doing is you're essentially modeling this request. So you have your base kind of URL, then you have the other parameters that you need to pass to that request, which is what you model here in Retrofit. Also, actually, as a side note, if you need a quick review on Retrofit, just kind of I prefer personally, I don't like video stuff. I like written stuff. So I have a blog post written by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Ayush, I think is how you pronounce it. He wrote a blog post for my website on getting started with Retrofit, and he kind of goes through everything you need from getting some JSON data from the internet. So it's a very basic kind of breakdown of how you would get started using Retrofit. So if you need a review, I suggest checking that out because it's a really good kind of concise review of Retrofit. But if this course was good enough for you, then obviously the course use that as a resource. So the next thing about Retrofit is that it allows you to model the responses that you get from the requests. So in the case of a GET request here, it returns a response, and it returns a response, a recipe object basically is what it is in JSON data. So when you're modeling this data, what you want to do is you want to make the response, you want to copy it, and you want to go to a JSON beautifier or a JSON viewer. So you can just type that in Google and go, code beautifier, JSON viewer. You can just paste that in there, go to beautify, and what that's going to do is it's going to make that request result look much cleaner for you, and then you can create a Java object to model what you see here. So this Java object would have a publisher, an F2F URL, an array of ingredients, source URL, recipe ID, and so on. So then you can create a Java object class, which is what we did, inside of the responses package here. So you have the recipe response, which returns that recipe query, and then you have a search response, which returns that search query. Looks like my API keys ran out for the day, but it returns a list of recipes. So that's going to be this recipe search response here. So kind of the beginning part of that is actually modeling the recipe object itself. So these are all the parameters that I included into what it means to be a recipe object. And that's what we got from this GET request here. So once again, if you look at the code beautifier, all of these parameters here define what it means to be a recipe in the context of this application. All right, so I've talked about the recycler view, the different views, the custom progress bar, the pagination, Retrofit, I think I already said that. Now let's talk about the architecture. So let's review the overall architecture. So diagrams are always really handy for reviewing architecture. So we have the activity or the fragment where an observer would be, and keep in mind we could have any number of activities or fragments also observing the live data. That's the beautiful thing about it. And our data is coming from one pathway only. I've designed the architecture to make it very easy for me to insert a database cache, but for this course, we only have one pathway, which is the web service retrieved from Retrofit, which goes to our data client class, then our repository, our view model, and our fragment. So let's review what classes are involved in the actual in Android Studio here. So I like to go from the endpoint and then kind of go down to the observers. So the web service is where we're going to start, which is the remote data source. So that's what we made inside of the, let's see here, it's in the requests package. We have our responses, our Retrofit responses. We have our Retrofit recipe API interface. And then we have a recipe API client and a service generator. So inside the recipe API client is where we make those queries. So we have two runnables. One is called retrieve recipes runnable, and one is called retrieve recipe runnable. So this is for the individual recipe objects. That's going to be the get request, this one. And then the other runnable is for the search request, which is this one. So we have retrieve recipes runnable. And each one of these will get a response using Retrofit. So we have the get recipes method here, which returns a call object inside the recipes case. And then we have a get recipe method, which returns a recipe response inside or in the form of a call object. And these runnables are executed on background threads using executors. So if I scroll up to either one of these methods, the search recipes API or the search recipe by ID method, these are executed, these runnables are executed using executors. And the reason I used executors, well, there's a couple of reasons. So the first reason is when you use executors, it lets you define a pool of threads that the Android system can automatically use and can load balance automatically. It basically has the ability to optimize these threads automatically without me having to do anything. I can just say, I want this thread pool to have 3 threads, and I'm going to pass it some work, and it can do whatever it needs to do to complete that work. And that's what we did in the service generator class. So this is that's the wrong one. That's for the singleton retrofit. It's inside the app executors class. So inside here, I'm creating an instance of the app executors object, and I'm using a scheduled executor service, which is essentially just a thread pool with added functionality. It's a thread pool that I can schedule. I can add schedules to. And what that means is I have the ability to set a timer to it, so I can leverage it to time it out, which is what you see inside of these executor methods. So the first one here has a recipe request timeout, and that's only going to occur after a certain time period that I've defined. So a network timeout constant, which is set to 3000 milliseconds. It's actually in the constants file, but it is set to 3000 milliseconds. And so you're probably wondering that why we never set any kind of a timeout for the retrieve recipes runnable, but we did set a timeout for the retrieve recipe runnable. And I never did that because we're going to be doing that in the database cache course. So when I do get to the database cache course, what's going to happen is if the network times out or the network fails, what's going to happen is it's going to query that database cache. So we don't have any kind of an infrastructure to time this out at this point, because I'm gonna wait till we do the database cache portion. But you can still see kind of an example of how you would do a timeout in the recipe retrieval case right here, where we're posting a recipe request timeout boolean to true, which is then observed in the activity, which would then display the error screen. So I'll show an example of that. So if I was to turn off the network and I was to just click on any one of these, obviously it's not retrieving those because the network is down. So if I was to click on this, after 3000 milliseconds or 3 seconds, it gives me this error screen and says it times out. So that's kind of how all that works. So now I guess we've pretty much gone over everything. The repository obviously is the middle ground, the hub for the data. It's either going to access the remote data source or access the SQLite database. Right now, it kind of seems pointless because we only have one pathway, so there's not a whole lot going on there. And the view model is very much the same. So if we go into the either of the view models, you have kind of that linear pathway that is retrieving live data from the repository, which is then retrieving the live data from the recipe API client. Oh, and of course, you've learned a bunch of other small things like, let's take a look at the build.gradle file here, how to use recycle views, card views, circular image views, glide, obviously, the JSON converter for Retrofit, which converts JSON objects to Java objects, or serializes them and deserializes them. What else is there? How to create singletons. We've created so many singletons. You are now an expert at creating singletons. You have the get instance method, which then instantiates a new object and then returns that instance. We've looked at menus. So if I go into recipe list activity, I've created a menu in the res directory and then set up that menu through the on options item selected and on create options menu method, and associated that menu with our custom toolbar by calling set support action bar, and also search view. We've used a search view. So if I scroll down somewhere here, there's an init search view method where we set an on query text listener to the search view and then execute a query when that query text is submitted. So yeah, I think that's probably pretty much a pretty concise review of everything that we've looked at. Creating a base activity. So creating a generalized activity model that you want to extend all your other activities by. So you have base activity extending app compat activity. Then if you look in the other activities, they extend by that base activity. Also notice that it's abstract, so you don't need to add it to the manifest. There's no base activity in here. There's only recipe list activity and recipe activity. And I see one more thing. Here we go. We've set the network security configuration. So remember, on API level 28 and above, they've changed how they do network security regarding HTTP. So if I try to retrieve images from the internet from HTTP addresses, it will fail by default. It will fail by default unless I add this network security config file and tell it that the certain addresses are okay. So I'm saying if it's trying to pull resources from an HTTP address that's static.food2fork.com, that's okay. I'm allowing that to happen. So I'm probably going to write a blog post on that because it's a pretty easy thing, and I'm sure a lot of people are getting confused. They're getting a lot of errors from that. But that's generally it. That was the course. I think it showcased a lot of really, really fundamental skills in terms of becoming an Android developer, using a web service, getting information from the internet, using proper architecture, and now moving forward, we can very easily implement a database cache to this infrastructure. It's going to be very simple for us to now insert another source of data. And that's the whole point, one of the whole points for this architecture. It's very easy to insert kind of layers wherever they need to be, and it stays very testable, very maintainable, very easy to read. It's really, really just a good way to structure your code. So I hope that you enjoyed the course. I really enjoyed making it. And once again, I want to say that if you did enjoy the course, please go to my blog, go up to this More section, go to testimonials, and take 2 seconds to write a testimonial. Tell me what this course helped you with specifically. So say like, this helped me get a job, or this helped me understand web services, this helped me understand architecture, like something like that. I'd be really grateful if you could do that. Of course, leave comments if you're confused about anything. Below every video, there is a comments section. So if I go to the course, below every single video, there's a comment section. So make sure to leave comments, and I will see you in that next video.